Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Monday, January 14th, 2013. I'm Darko, and we're going to cover the war on terror, liberty, sovereignty, and this news report for today. Should be about 2 or 3 videos, and the highlight, of course, the main story over the weekend that's developed was Mali. So pretty interesting. Right after our Friday's news reports, basically France began their little war on Mali. So this was a lot of build-up. Everybody should have saw it coming. In fact, it should have happened a little bit later, but France just went ahead and just carried out the airstrikes without the UN and different forms of troops that they were trying to build up. So, all right, so it says hundreds of French troops drive back the Mali rebels, although they've actually lost a lot of ground since then. The battle to retake Mali's north from al-Qaeda-linked groups controlling it began in earnest on Saturday after hundreds of French forces deployed to the country and began aerial bombardments to drive back the Islamic extremists. So the mainstream media is going to keep putting Al-Qaeda linked, and they'll do that to basically anything, even if it's like a far-right, quote, extremist group, conservative group, or patriot group in the United States. They'll say they're Al-Qaeda linked. So then everyone that reads the mainstream media that only gets their news from that will start to get into a fear-based mode and say, well, okay, do something, make us safe, make me secure. But really, they're going in there for resources. And someone said, Mali doesn't even have any resources. So I went in there and corrected that individual in the comment board by showing that they do have the third largest exporting of gold. They actually have oil reserves that have been untapped, not touched. They also have rich uranium resources as well, so they do have them. Pre-planned Mali invasion reveals France's neo-colonialistic agenda. Says the speed and extent with which French warplanes have been deployed over the weekend in West Africa point to a well-honed plan for intervention by the former colonial power. So, of course, France was heading up the Libyan invasion or colonization. We remember that, French planes backed by NATO and, of course, U.S. in the shadows working. But this new, basically, al-Qaeda-linked group that they call it, Muslim extremist, were the result of what was going on in Libya, arming all those rebels and stuff like that. So, same thing that's happening in Syria. So, like back in November, I had a video saying that the Mali invasion is imminent. That was back in November. You can be rest assured that after Syria goes down, like Libya, after using extremists by the West to create instability and get regime change, they'll never actually restore order. Usually just enough so that they get the oil flowing out of the country. But what's going on in Mali is a direct result of what happened in Libya. So when Syria goes down, you'll have nearby countries as well being unstable and stuff like that, unstable. I think the most obvious region or part is going to be Kurdistan, Iraq, and Turkey. And of course Jordan and probably Israel, but like I said, Israel always, they always seem to basically come out ahead. It helps them out. So it says here that military intervention by France and the other Western powers in Mali under the guise of defeating terrorism is a bridgehead for Western capital and corporations, not only into a resource-rich country, but into a large chunk of the entire African continent. And that's what Israel is, a beachhead into the Arab, Muslim, Middle East and that. Within hours of the Malian government requesting military support, says French warplanes began carrying out airstrikes on Friday. The attack sorties have reportedly been conducted for at least 3 consecutive days, and reports say that the fighter jets have struck across a wide belt of remote Sahelian country with nearby Algeria. NATO welcomes French action in Mali and receives no aid requests. So NATO welcomed France's military intervention in Mali, or colonization, they could put, right? That's like how they play the word games with Israel and the settlements, or occupying or colonization, right? France says that the U.S. is helping support Mali operation. So France claimed new success in its campaign to out the extremists that they helped create in Mali by bombarding a major city with airstrikes targeting the airport and training camps. France's foreign minister says that the attack or invasion is gaining international support, right? With communications and transport help from the U.S. and backing from Britain, Denmark, and other European countries. Again, there's Denmark, just like deploying Patriot missiles and troops to the Turkish-Syria border. Canada says they're going to give France military transport aircraft for the Mali operation. They said while the government of Canada is not and will not be considering a direct Canadian military mission in Mali, Canada is prepared to provide limited and clearly defined logistical support to assist the forces that are intervening in Mali, Harper said. Germany considers options to aid Mali intervention. Again, Germany was right there with with Turkey and Syria, and they actually sent troops and Patriot missiles batteries. So, and remember just the article recently about Germany wanting to be a military power of the world. Well, they're really starting to show that they're trying. So, Germany has said it's looking at ways to aid France's intervention against Islamist rebels in Mali as airstrikes continue. Meanwhile, the rebels have seized a central town in an African country as they push southward. Such support could come in the fields of logistics, medical support, and humanitarian support. So, Algeria authorizes France to use its airspace for the Mali operation. Rebels in Mali vowed revenge at heart of France. So it says here that when asked about where they would strike, they said everywhere, in Africa and in Europe. Unrest erupted in Mali after their president was toppled in a military coup on March 22, 2012. The coup leaders said that they had mounted the coup in response to the government's failure to contain the Tuareg rebellion in the north of the country. I remember seeing articles about, just like in Ethiopia, that the CIA was there, kind of like in Somalia, that they were actually running Ethiopia, or again in the shadows. That the same thing with Mali. That basically the CIA helped push that coup to get these Tuareg rebels that were basically filling a power vacuum that was a result of what was going on in Libya and all the weapons that were flowing out of the country and into it. But that's when this Ansar Dine faction came in that was actually more extreme. Again, this is the same group that's heading up what's going on in Syria, and they're starting to piss off other even extremist groups too. So you have France saying Mali's Islamists are surprisingly strong, in quotes, well-trained, well-armed rebels awash in Libyan arms. Ooh, there you go. So it says virtually the whole northern half of Africa is awash in weapons looted in the wake of the NATO war for regime change in Libya, and all those weapons are making the French invasion of Mali a lot less convenient than they'd figured. Quote, at the start we thought they would just be a load of guys with guns driving about in their pickups, but the reality is that they are well-trained, well-equipped, and well-armed, noted a French official, someone who's training them. From Libya, they have got a hold of a lot of up-to-date, sophisticated equipment, which is much more robust and effective than we could have imagined. It says they perhaps should have imagined this as the Tuareg secessionists that initially took northern Mali did so with weapons from Libya, quickly overwhelming the Malian military. The Islamist factions then quickly defeated the Tuaregs. This makes it difficult to imagine why France would assume the group would be any worse armed than the Tuaregs were. Like most modern invasions, it's not going to actually be a bulk of the French troops. They only have a few hundred. They're planning to rely on Senegal and Niger for most ground fighting while launching airstrikes against the northern cities in an open-ended war. This means that France will likely be able to pound the region at its leisure, barring significant anti-aircraft weapons having found their way into northern Mali, but any efforts to actually occupy will be very much more difficult. Then we have 8 civilians killed in failed French operation in Somalia. So, this is kind of interesting. At first I thought it was just a disinfo piece, and who knows, maybe it is. But French operations, in Somalia after Mali, I'm like, what's going on here? It says Somali witnesses say at least 8 civilians were killed in a recent botched operation carried out by French troops to free an intelligence agent held hostage in Somalia. This is actually since 2009, apparently. But 4 civilians, including 3 from one family, are among the dead, says a resident. They were killed outside this town where the French commandos landed before entering the city. So, although the killings have angered local Somalis, French minister has defended the failed operation. These 5 French helicopters and 50 troops were involved in the Friday night air raid on the house in the Somali capital. It says here south of the Somali capital by 70 miles. Reports say one French soldier was killed and another went missing during the Friday operation. Some 17 militants were also killed. Al-Shabaab said that the French intelligence agent and the missing soldier were still alive, vowing to retaliate against French civilians. Alright, so next up we have similar story. Terrorists taunt France after a failed rescue mission. This is what was in Yahoo. So they're talking about what? They use the term Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists. They're talking about Al-Shabaab. So Al-Shabaab, that's just like all the other groups, they're very tech savvy, and they said in a tweet and showed a picture. Francois Holland, was it worth it? And from Land Destroyer report, we have France displays unhinged hypocrisy as bombs fall on Mali. It says here, NATO funding, arming, and simultaneously fighting Al-Qaeda from Mali to Syria. A deluge of art. See, that's the thing, right? It's like you keep hearing the whole word about Al-Qaeda linked, Al-Qaeda linked. Well, they're actually supporting Al-Qaeda in Syria. So in one day, in one part, or the same day, I guess, Al-Qaeda is good. In a different part of the day, in a different part of the world, Al-Qaeda is, bad. So it is hypocrisy. A deluge of articles have been quickly put into circulation defending France's military intervention. That's what they keep calling a military intervention. They're intervening, right? And in the name of fighting terrorists and humanitarianism. And the African nation of Mali, Times article, The Crisis in Mali, will French intervention stop the Islamist advance? Decides that old tricks are the best tricks and elects the tiresome war on terror narrative. Time claims that the intervention seeks to stop Islamist terrorists from overrunning both Africa and all of Europe. So that's what makes me wonder if that article about the Somalia thing was even true at all, because people I read in the comment boards in that mainstream article, oh, France, stand your ground, and these terrorists are like coming out of the work, they're like rats. And so most of the mainstream sheeple actually support them, so which is not surprising. Sad that people haven't pulled their heads out of their asses yet, but it's not surprising. Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb, one of the three groups that make up the Malian Islamist Alliance, in which provides much of the leadership, has also designated France a representative of Western power in the region as a prime target for the attack. What Time elects not to tell its readers, is that Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb is closely allied to the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. So it says here, whom France intervened on behalf of during NATO's 2011 proxy invasion of Libya, providing weapons, training, special forces, and even aircraft to support them in the overthrow of Libya's government. Back in 2011, this Bruce Riedel, out of the corporate financier-funded think tank, the Brookings Institute, wrote Algeria will be the next to fall, where he gleefully predicted success in Libya would embolden radical elements in Algeria. Says between extremist violence and the prospect of French airstrikes, he hoped to see the fall of the Algerian government. Ironically, he noted, Algeria has expressed particular concern that the unrest in Libya could lead to the development of a major safe haven and sanctuary for Al-Qaeda and other extremist jihadists. Remember, in order to attack Mali too, they had to get the green light from Algeria, which we were waiting on. So it says, and thanks to NATO, this is exactly what Libya has become, a Western-sponsored sanctuary for Al-Qaeda. So this Al-Qaeda group or faction in northern Mali and now French involvement will see conflict inevitably spill over into Algeria. But what also ties into this, of course, is what? Is that Riedel also co-authored Which Path to Persia, which openly conspires to arm yet another U.S. State Department-listed terrorist organization that was just unlisted, the Mujahideen or MEK, to wreak havoc across Iran and help collapse the government there. And here's a little graphic too, you can go in there and check it out, links will be posted. The Libyan Islamic Fighting Group's U.S. facilitated terror tidal wave emanating out of Libya, going east through Egypt into Saudi Arabia, over to Iran and Afghanistan, also right in the heart of Syria and Damascus, Algeria, and then Mali. So Land Destroyer is saying that French involvement may drive this Al-Qaeda group and its affiliates out of northern Mali, but they are almost sure to end up in Algeria, most likely by design. So that's actually the wild card that I was talking about. I didn't have a country to name, but that's what it would be, I guess, right? Algeria, mostly by design. It says Algeria was able to balk subversion during the early phases of the U.S. engineered Arab Spring in 2011, but it will surely not escape the attention of the West, who is in the midst of transforming a region stretching from Africa to Beijing and Moscow's doorsteps, and in a fit of geopolitical schizophrenia, using terrorists both as a casus belli to invade and as an inexhaustible mercenary force to do it, which is true. The war on terror spreads to Africa as the U.S. sends troops to 35 African nations. This was the backdrop behind all of this. America sets its sights on controlling African resources and reducing Chinese influence. And this is under the guise of fighting Al-Qaeda and related terrorists. U.S. armies will be sending troops to 35 African countries early next year for training programs and other operations as part of an increased Pentagon role in Africa. They're talking about groups linked to Al-Qaeda in countries such as Libya, Sudan, Algeria, and Niger. And of course, they'll have drones and special forces to go to little hot spots where they're going to try to, get their resources and that. Join me in part 2. This is GGN on Darko. Thank you.